Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to another awesome, of course, because why wouldn't it be awesome? Because we're here, September 5th episode of the Security Data Operations Streamcast, whatever it is you want to call it. This is our bi-monthly stream where we talk about all things security operations, data operations, and really the convergence of the two in the modern day cybersecurity team. I almost stream and team, stream, too close together. We gotta work on these words. Want to say thanks to everybody who's tuning into us. We are multi-streaming across Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, X. I think that's all of it. Thank you all very much for everybody who's tuning in across various platforms. We are so grateful to be able to broadcast to you wherever you are. Let's hit a couple of rules really quick. And then I'll introduce my guest for the day. First and foremost, number one most important rule is no toxicity. What does that mean? We have no racist, sexist, misogynistic, elitist, or otherwise toxic behavior in chat at all, period, dot, end of discussion. We do have mods in chat. Let's give a huge shout, claps, bits. Throw the hands together for our mod team. They do work tirelessly to make sure that we keep chat free from all that toxic behavior and really a welcoming place for you to commune and interact with your fellow cybersecurity professionals, regardless of the platform you're tuning in to us on. Mods are not here, however, to stifle chat in any way whatsoever. If you're new to cyber insecurity, our chats blow up across all the platforms. We highly encourage you to chat, with folks inside of inside your platform, whether it's about the topics that are going on, whether it's about any of the other topics that happen to come up, whether it's something that I or my guests say on stream. We highly encourage that chat. This also kind of leads into really the second rule, or more of a reminder than anything else. We love questions. Absolutely. We love questions. I see a lot of first-time chatters. I love Twitch because Twitch tells me whenever we've got first-time chatters. I love seeing the first-time chatters in Twitch. If you're a first-time chatter across any of the platforms, we absolutely love questions. As a matter of fact, our mod team doubles to make sure that chat stays safe. And in addition to that, they also grab the questions and comments that are placed into chat, and at various times during the stream, they may push them up on screen so that we can interact with them and you can ask questions. And so instead of having a dedicated Q&A time at the end, we encourage questions to happen throughout. We welcome all of our new guests, all of our new visitors from across the different platforms. Please drop those questions. Please drop those comments either for myself or my guest at any point in time. That way we can have an interactive conversation and keep it interesting and relevant to you. Chat across all the platforms, I can't even remember all the names. Put your hands together. LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, X, TikTok, wherever you are at. Put them together for my good friend, my guest, Reanna Schultz. Reanna, welcome to the Sec Data Ops stream. How the hell are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, Neal.
Now, I always like to brag about our guest history when we bring them online. Yours is no different. You've got an amazing history, and I love to just brag about it really quick, right? You started as a security analyst for Honeywell. Then you moved to an MSSP known as Sideris for those who don't know, that was the Robert Herjavec investment. And then you went over to Garmin, where you were promoted from security analyst up to now a SOC or security operations leader. So congratulations on your awesome career. Now that I've bragged about you, I need you to brag about yourself for a second. What would you say is the one key trait that you possess that's made you as successful this far?
I would say I want to highlight too, actually, not to be super braggy, but I am. Being vulnerable and driven are the two words I always like to describe myself, because that's how I get my passion. I took those chances. I allowed myself to fail, and it fueled my hunger for why I do what I do, right? And hopefully my story inspires other people as well.
All right, so since you brought up failure, this wasn't on my topic list, but since you brought it up, I'm going to absolutely probe into this because I think it's important for our audience to know.
Absolutely.
Describe your failure and describe how that impacted your career.
Oh my goodness. So there's a lot, right? Between, I'm getting up there in my age, whether I look like it or not. But between like going to college, right? and completely bombing assignment or asking a stupid question in class to, hey, this is my first time in corporate America. And I didn't realize I was presenting in a meeting because I'm an intern and I don't check my calendar, to, here I am in leadership and I accidentally gave someone bad advice and now it's a reflection of me. And you're just like, oh, lesson learned. Don't say those things out loud, right? Or my favorite thing, when you accidentally say the quiet things out loud in front of a group of people and you're like, oh, Brad, I'm so sorry.
Hopefully Brad's not listening, or maybe he is. Maybe it's good.
Hey, Brad.
Awesome. I'm glad that you brought up failure, because I do, again, this is, welcome to Cyber and Security, real conversations with real people. This is obviously going to deviate from a little bit of the script that we typically go by, but I love that you talk about failure, because I think, and tell me if this is your perspective, you talk to a lot of new folks as well in your role. I think that there's a perspective that we never fail in cybersecurity.
No.
Like, what would you say about that?
Well, absolutely. Especially, I feel like imposter syndrome is so real. It's something I had to fight through early on in my career, especially if you're on a team of very talented, passionate people who have 5 years and you're like, I'm straight out of college, or I just took a boot camp over the weekend, and you're over there saying words and it sounds like you're talking in a different language. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to be able to ever be there in my career. And then of course, you get your years of experience, you get that exposure. And then you start going across the other avenues. Like in my journey, I never thought I would be doing a podcast or having a discussion with you or, speaking at conferences. If someone told me that my second day in corporate America, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Are you talking about me?
Hey. But one thing I absolutely learned from all of this is, I've had rejection. I've applied for the jobs. I've been rejected from the jobs. Or, you go through all of these interview processes and you just get completely ghosted. I always like to say it's almost like the dating game, it's just you either have the chemistry with that employer or you're just going to get completely ghosted and blocked. And you're like, oh, I guess that didn't mean anything to you. Thank you for the 30 minutes of that interview.
Dating life and interviewing for a job. Welcome to the show by Neal and Reanna. All right, Reanna, you are a wealth of knowledge, and I absolutely want to exploit that for the benefit of the world. So let's dive into it. Let's start. We're gonna really start kind of tactically, because there's a lot of folks when we talk about our audience, we've got a range of folks who listen to our show, right? Everything from young analysts to people trying to get into the career field, but we also have CISOs and senior leaders. We have chief product officers and folks like that listen to us. And so I think it's super important for that wide range of folks to really understand some of the tactical things that happen in the security operations center. And so recognizing, again, we can leave the caveat in place that every enterprise is different. Let's start off with a bit of level setting. Could you walk us through a day in the life of a SOC analyst?
So I will give you two perspectives. One was when I was technical, and one is in leadership. In leadership, I think I have countless of meetings. One thing's for sure, I always try to make time for my team. One of the most impactful things that from a good leader I've had in my journey is he was busy. He was a very passionate, high energy guy. He's probably the reason why I currently have a Red Bull addiction, but that's okay. But one of the things he did is every morning he stopped and said hi. It didn't matter what was going on. It didn't matter what dumpster fire was hitting the fan that day or how his personal life was going on. He made sure to stop and be, hey, good morning. And it's just oh, he knows I exist today. I showed up to work, and it's just one of those the investment return kind of thing. And that's definitely something I took back people. I'm like, hey, how are you? How are things going? And regardless if they're on my team or not, cyber can be very intimidating. We talk about the boogeyman, but we never really describe what the boogeyman is. And so now everyone's like, oh, cyber, they're going to tell me I can't download this software today. And I'm just like, yeah, because you can't. Sorry.
It's because you really can't.
But when I was on the... No, because I said no. And then, you give the mom look and you're like, I know what you did. I only ask questions that I know the answer to. But from like the technical side, right? I swear every day is just something new, but it doesn't phase you eventually. And you go through things such as user question policies, procedures, or hey, there's a lot of phishing happening, whether maybe there's something going on in our EDR or our firewall. But one thing that I always like to promote, especially in a security operations center, you have to be prepared. You have to have some level of cycles for your day-to-day to be spent on preparedness and readiness. Because again, a SOC is literally the first responders for a cybersecurity organization, whether you're paying out a third party for this or you have something internally in-house. These people are your firefighters, your police officers, and your EMT, because they're going in, assessing that damage, assessing that situation, and making those determination calls literally in seconds to say, hey, your organization has an intruder, a risk, or a potential threat. And so when people are in a security operations center, regardless what training you've had, regardless of what background, you know, it's the fact that you have to be driven. You have to have that mental mindset of today's the day that anything can happen. And I am literally here with my team, and we're going to tackle this issue together.
So I love that. And we're a huge fan here on the stream of talking about SOC analysts being those frontline soldiers. That's why Panzer Tank dropped that comment. We oftentimes talk about frontline soldiers. Man, you guys are on the front lines defending the enterprise on a day-to-day basis. But I think you glossed over just how daunting of a job that is. And I hold no punches back. Don't hold anything back. How daunting is it to realize that you are the one protecting the entirety of an enterprise from a breach?
It can be a lot of pressure. I mean, we talk about things such as alert fatigue, talk about task, right? All of these things, being an individual contributor, can help maybe not get that determination, right? And think about your personal life. You're taking that, you literally are having to check your emotions out the door so you can spend all of your cycles focusing on, hey, if this is this good or is this bad? And so now that I'm in a leadership position, right? And these are things I even talk about on conferences or through podcasts and stuff like that. It is your job as a leader to recognize and protect your people from these potential burnout, right? We can go and buy whatever shiny tool. We can go and talk to whatever vendor and get whatever t-shirt or steak dinner, you know, we go back to the dating scene, but with sales representatives.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's like, where is that noise coming from? Mm-hmm. Are we closing a lot of false positives with our EDR appliance? Is it the same hash? Is it the same application? Why are we doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results to happen? I'm pretty sure Einstein calls that insanity. And I'm literally going to go insane closing the same MD5 hash that's being flagged when it takes me 30 seconds to open a support ticket with the vendor. Or, hey, maybe just put an exclusion, right? I know for a fact that MS Paint is going to be used nonstop with this corner of the business or whatever, you know. I just use MS Paint because that's what's up currently on my computer. But I totally do not do pay by numbers during my meetings. No, but
I was going to say, I was like, note to self, Reanna paints by numbers during meetings. You bring up tools, and I love this, right? I love this conversation, especially when we dive into the nuances of tools. Like, so I've built numerous security operations teams for a lot of Fortune 100 companies, massive organizations, terabytes of Splunk ingest. And I can remember my first exposure coming from the red side to the blue side. You know, the SOC team that I was leading as a director for my first SOC team, there were 47 tools that they had to go into every investigation. And so I was wondering, can you talk through, like, that was a good number of years ago. Has that situation changed? How many different types of tools do you even begin to look through to start triaging a potential incident?
Oh my gosh, I swear every year they come out with some new buzzword for a tool. And like, I made a joke the other day. I was like, zero trust was being sold in security tools. I'm like, do these vendors even know what security trust is? Security trust isn't a tool, man. And then now they're like AI. And I'm like, do you know the difference between AI and machine learning? I was like, because I can ask ChatGPT, and that's definitely not correct. You should probably ask your AI prompt first before trying to sell me AI. But this is where the benefit of having a really good SIM and SOAR appliance is, right? The SIM is literally your big data tool. It's ingesting every single thing in your environment, whether it's going to be your security alerts, your audits, or even just the logs off of an endpoint to tell that whole entire story when you're going through those incident response procedures. Now, your SOAR tool, I like to promote it as that single pane of glass. You have 5 million tools, right? That's why we have defense in depth. We are literal layers here uncovering what is going on in our business. So thinking about outside in, you have web application firewall. You probably have things happening at the edge layer. You have your firewall. Now you're going down to, whatever in between's on the host. So maybe a host-based firewall, your antivirus. And now you're talking about identity access, such as MFA, least privilege, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to see if this person clicked on a link today, and now you're telling me I have to go through all the way back out to this onion. No, but this is where you can utilize these amazing tools, like within a SIM, right? You can have common name schemas. So that way, all these different appliances, you can just search on a username and it will just correlate across all those different indexes. And then in the SOAR, right? Hey, if you have a user potentially abusing their account and trying to log into things they're not supposed to, and then now they're downloading applications, that SOAR is going to allow you to essentially cross-correlate all those alerts into a single pane of glass, and it allows that SOC analyst to tell more of a story as to, hey, Brad, stop being Brad today, Sorry.
I was going to say, I was like, Brad, don't text me with whatever problems that Reanna's bringing up to you. Like, I don't know what you're doing in the enterprise, but you got to stop.
I talked to 13 Brads and they're like, oh my gosh, is she talking about me today? Hey, Brad.
Do you you bring up SOAR, and this is an interesting conversation, right? Because I've tried to do SOAR at a couple different deployments, and I feel like every time it's been a failure, but it's not because SOAR isn't great technology. I think everybody loved the idea of automation. It's that the business gets in the way of really capitalizing on automation. Is that kind of your perspective as well? Do you see that?
Well, I feel like in the community, you have one or two ways, right? The business is really sold on security. They want to collaborate. They want to work with security. And then the other side of the spectrum is we don't care. We're going to do what we do. Security, in all seriousness, right? Security doesn't make the company revenue. We protect assets. We protect the revenue. We give that external brand, that cushion, warm feeling for stakeholders. And they're like, oh yeah, we got cybersecurity. And you're just all like, do you want to see what I do? And in reality, you're just you're like, click the export button, top left corner. And no, that's the right corner, click export. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, it's just a PDF. And they're like, oh, Brad wanted an Excel sheet. You're like, why are we doing this in Excel? Just setting that aside, right? Yeah. If you want to see the administration side of my job, that's 90% of it. But going back to the general question, having a good brand with your cybersecurity department, I feel like can really help. Again, I like to use the analogy of the boogeyman, and people react different to the cybersecurity threat actors. They either super scared, they shut down, and then you get 1,000 questions like, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? I'm so sorry, this and that. Or you have the other spectrum where it's just they're very angry, right? They're going to do what they want, because whether it's, hey, I have, false hope or false trust in the fact I'm going to be okay, nothing bad happens to me, or I'm just going to do what I want at the end of the day. But having that good transparency, that good collaboration, that relationship building, in my opinion, goes way, way further. And I feel like we have sometimes a hard time stepping back as professionals or practitioners and putting ourselves in the shoe of the user and being like, well, Brad really needs to code this. He needs this, repository, doesn't really have a good reputation. Is it really malware, or is it just behaving like malware, right? Where can we have that good balance between usability and security? Because even though, right, we are part of the business, our users are customers of our security service at the end of the day. So how can we make our customers happy while also still selling our product? And it's hard to think you're technical, you're still a salesperson at the end of the day. You're selling security to your business, right? You're trying to win those C-suite over. And of course, sometimes people at the end of the day, regardless of what they do or how friendly or how much they brush their teeth and wear deodorant, it's going to take a cyber attack to have some people understand. And then next thing you know, they're on Forbes magazine or Wire talking about how someone lets someone into their Slack channels. So,
hey, that's a good way to get on Forbes, though. I mean, that's a much easier way than becoming Elon Musk, I guess. It looks like there was a question about SOAR that came through. I've got my take on this, obviously, but I want to hear your take on it. What's your stance on the question when to implement SOAR in the company? Start automating ASAP or after some maturity is needed?
To me, right, again, it's going to depend on your budget. If you have like trillions of dollars, sure, go wild, go do whatever you want. Go buy all the Splunk servers, do everything Splunk. This isn't sponsored by Splunk.
No, this is definitely not sponsored by Splunk.
Please send me another t-shirt. But again, you have to know who is part of your cybersecurity department, right? If we're specifically talking about a SOC, what roles and hats does a security analyst have in your organization, right? Are they doing alerts? Are they doing detection engineering? Are they also your pen testers? Maybe they're also your vulnerability analyst, right? What are your roles, right? Once you have that defined, this is where you can start collecting your metrics. Some things I recommend to start looking at is how long does it detect, right? How long does it take a person to grab an alert from the time it comes in to how long does it take for them to resolve it? And if you're starting to realize, hey, my analyst is working in EDR, now they're working in an email security platform. Now we're getting 5,000 emails from a security tool and I don't know who's grabbing it. And you have all of this organized, disorganized chaos going. At what point is not implementing that automation or a single pane of glass that's going to start creating frustration, that's going to start creating burnout, right? And this is also important, regardless if you're an individual contributor, whether you're a leader or starting off coming into it, having that good positive relationship with your leader or whoever's doing your budget, right? And just talking about, hey, I've noticed I'm working 5 alerts. I've also noticed Brad is also working the same 5 alerts. And so now we're duplicating efforts, right? And we have realized it's taken us 30 minutes to close this, right? Now you have quantitative data to support why you might need a SOAR rather than I'm getting burned out. This is frustrating. Cool. Nice. We're all burned out, man. Welcome to the world.
I was gonna say, I was like, wait, are we taking orders on who's burnt out? The SOAR question is interesting, right? Because like I guess I'm slightly more cynical on it than you are. I think that I don't think that SOAR is the answer anymore. I think that I think we had high hopes and visions for SOAR. I don't think that it's played out the way that we all hoped it would in the industry if you look at it from inception to completion. I think you're right. I think it works for some organizations. I think MSPs, like I don't understand how you run an MSSP without some form of automation. You almost have to at that point in time, right? But I don't think that for the majority of enterprises, automation is as much of a game changer as we were sold on it by vendors.
Yeah, and some things, like a lot of SIEM vendors now, they're calling it the security console or, some similar term like that. And so now instead of like the automation feature, right, where, I'm just going to close this here instead of going back into the security console to close the alert or, whatever automation that was sold on. End of the day, we're creatures of habit. We're probably already in the console regardless, But what a lot of the SIEM vendors are doing, you're already ingesting logs into your SIEM, and now they're just pulling it up into a dashboard based off the index on how you're pulling those logs. And that's what people want, right? They just want metrics at the end of the day, who's taking what, and, are making sure we're not duplicating that effort. Again, some people are like, oh my gosh, I nerd out on AP automation and this and that. And awesome. If you're able, and this is what I like about the cyber community, right? People are able to provide their insights on, hey, this is what I did with my SOAR tool. This is what we did, right? And now you have this like collaborative community. And some people are like, oh my God, we don't have the knowledge or the resources to have a a coder to sit here and automate us. Like we don't. We're more focused on the detection engineering aspect. And that's okay, right? There's no right or wrong answer with that.
So you said a couple things in there that I actually want to use as a jumping off point for a couple of topics. Yeah. You mentioned metrics, and this is a funny topic because like I do think that this is one of those again very 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 subjective conversations inside of most security orgs, right? Speaking of which, like the distinction between what the CEO thinks is important versus what the CISO thinks is important versus what the actual analyst or the entire SOC team as a whole thinks is important. So when you think about metrics and you had to break them down kind of in those three buckets, what are the things that are important at those levels, and how do you reconcile those differences across that chain?
So fun fact, I used to not care about metrics until I had to start caring about metrics. Especially like when you're in the individual contributor role, you're just all like, why can't we buy this? Why can't we? And I'm just all like, dude.
Yes.
And then of course, once you get like in the leadership side, you're like, oh my God, we need a garage sale this weekend, you know?
Exactly. That's why I want you to talk about it, because I think that right there, chat, pay attention to this, right? Because this is exactly what we talk about. When you're an individual contributor, your mentality is vastly different. You just want to get the job done. You just want to get the job done. And that becomes really obscure the more you go up the chain.
Absolutely. And I read a really, really great book, and there's audiobooks and everything. So Minder had released a book called SOC Essentials for like a world-class SOC. And it's something.
That's a great book. Yes.
Fantastic book. And especially if you're getting new into leadership, or, hey, congrats, you're going to charge them metrics and you have no idea what that means. There is a lot of good information in there, between understanding how to present it to a chief officer, or compared to like maybe presenting to your director or internal leaders or your IT partners. And then also like, hey, within the team itself. And one thing that I have learned from my personal experiences and sitting in these conversations, or even going to conferences, and you have a diverse range of people, I did a talk on this, and it talks about what metrics are beneficial and know thy audience, essentially. And I had a person, and he was actually a senior exec, and he goes, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really care. And I was like, okay, so why am I wasting my time in your boardroom? Like, what do you need from me to like make this value add? Because I'm not gonna sit here and make PowerPoints and Excel sheets for you. I hate Excel. And he was like, what I care about is, how is my money being used? If you're telling me your EDR appliance is $5 billion, what are we doing with that? Because all I hear in the industry is how much noise this is causing. So why am I wasting my money on this? And of course, like on the security side, or even like individual contributor side, you're like, well, duh, it stops things at like the endpoint. And then you're like, oh, how many of those were actually true positives? How many of those required us to start initiating an incident response? Okay, well, now as a leader of now I can start seeing these metrics, and I'm like, holy cow, we have a 70% false positive rate. Is it false positive because it's truly not malicious, or is it a false positive because it's not malicious in my environment? And how can we work towards that? Or maybe, hey, let's start organizing our machines, right? Do we have one specific user who's constantly being annoying all day, Brad? Or do we have, or do we just have like, poor Brad, or maybe we have like a bad agent that just got pushed out. And so all these signatures aren't good. I mean, we just saw what happened to CrowdStrike, right? And so you can't tell me how many of those execs are sitting in the room going, oh my gosh, we're paying millions and millions of dollars for all of our systems to not work. What's the value add here? What are we going to do in the future to prevent this from happening? And so what tool is costing the most money that we're constantly having to vet for? What is the value add of this tool? And also, what did we stop with this, right? Is there a potential trend targeting my business? Because now this is how we're going to start incorporating that, maybe potentially into security education, or maybe this is where we start doing a gap analysis across our MITRE framework within our environment, right? Where's our gaps in our attack surface? I can only protect what I can see at the end of the day. So long-winded answer.
No. Because I think what I heard you say, if I could summarize it up, is the budget holders, right? The CEO, the CISO. At the end of the day, I think you hit the nail on the head. Okay, I'm gonna give you money, but just like any responsible parent, I want to understand, what am I getting for my money? How are you using it?
What is there's always like a reference I like to use. I don't know if you ever watched The Office, but there's like this one episode, and he's like explained it to me like I'm 5, and he's like, your parents gave you money for a lemonade stand.
Yes.
And it's so true. It's just like, the lemonade stand is our CrowdStrike agent, you know? Yeah. And so they want to make sure that you took that money for that lemonade stand and you did the best you could with that money to protect the organization. Yeah, absolutely.
When you think about that realization that you had going from an analyst to a leader, right? From an individual contributor to a leader, from a metrics perspective, what would you go back and tell your younger self about the metrics you hated pulling from for your boss in a previous life?
So I feel like when I was an individual contributor, I was very competitive, and I'm like, oh, Brad closed 30 cases today. Well, I can be better than Brad, you know? Oh, look, I ran 3 incidents this month. Oh, sorry, Brad, you were too slow to grab that alert. You know, like, those were the metrics I had in my head. Or like, oh, I closed X amount of tickets that were assigned to me for a task. You know, like, that's how I measure my worth to my boss as an individual contributor. And of course, now, if I could tell myself going from individual contributor to leadership, it's step back from the weeds. You're not in the weeds anymore. Like, you should know what's kind of happening around you, right? Be plugged in, be engaged, be supportive, be invested. But what's the bigger picture? We need to not only look at what's happening today, but how am I going to scale my team next year? How am I going to scale my team in 5 years, right? Now, not only are the threats happening going on today, but what emerging technologies is my team going to have to be prepared for, right? Where do I need to start investing their education, getting that training in, making sure that they're aligned with the emerging threats that are happening, these new vulnerabilities, AI, right? So like, where are my metrics going to stand for that? I don't care if Brad closed 300 tickets. I'm more concerned as to, hey, I have a high performer. What do I need to do to make sure Brad's going to be happy and that he's still passionate coming into work every day, right? And so it's important whenever I sit down, especially in one-on-ones, whether it's with my boss, my team, or even like mentor sessions I have with people in the community. And I'm like, how's your day?
Yeah.
Right? What can I do? And they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of dealing with XYZ every single day. And so then I'm like, okay, I know if someone else is starting to have this issue, right? Okay, now I'm starting to see a pattern form as to where the noises in my team, right? My team might be getting frustrated with this, right? Yeah. And so now you go in and you're like, oh my gosh, a total of like 30 hours my team alone has spent in this one thing that is clearly needs to be fixed by this team. And so then as a leader, right, it's my job to protect my team, making sure they're not getting burned out, making sure that these relationships across our functional teams are being built. And so this is where you start extending out to that team. And you're like, hey, let's just sit down and talk, right? I need to understand what you're doing because this is what's happening here. And so either we need to update our process or you guys should probably be doing things the correct way. So having that relationship building, that transparency, right? You're building trust. You're building trust as a leader with your team. You're building trust with your cross-segment partners, right? Because you're having that clear, transparent communication, right? And if things can't get fixed, okay, how are we gonna go past this roadblock moving forward? What ideas do people have where we're not impacting our visibility into monitoring and detecting, but we're making things more usable for both the customer of security and then my team as well.
Dig it. I dig it. Let's pivot back around really quick. I want to take this again. You said something in a previous segment that you mentioned you invoked the behemoth that is Splunk, Cisco. And so I want to poke that bear a little bit because I never miss an opportunity to poke that bear by any stretch of the imagination. You'd mentioned, most people have some type of, data centralization where they centralize a lot of, logs, and they centralize all their data, and that kind of acts as kind of this single repository. And I think if I were to be slightly confrontational with you on this a little bit, I think what you described there really represents a utopia. I think having built, Splunk deployments, over my career, choices are always made about where to put data, right? Do you put it in the Splunk? Mm-hmm. Do you leave it in the tool? What gets indexed? What doesn't? And let's be quite honest, it's to your point, right? If you got trillions of dollars, go stick it all in Splunk because you got trillions of dollars for a security budget. But I think you and I both know that that's not reality.
No, not at all.
So then with that being said, how do you take a data-centric look at the data that goes into the SIEM versus not? And how do you make those strategic decisions about what gets ingested in a SIEM versus what doesn't?
Yeah, and this is mostly for people listening, right? Who's never really had to manage a SIEM appliance. First off, it is so fun managing a SIEM appliance. And then,
that's sarcasm for Chad. For Chad who doesn't understand sarcasm, that's what that was.
And it's I don't know, would I rather manage email security or would I rather manage a SIEM this week? I don't know. Pick your poison. But, to answer your question, I feel like being on the security side, we're hoarders. We are data hoarders. Mm-hmm. We want all the data. Yeah. We want to put it all in a little cute treasure chest, and we just want to cherish it for 90 days and then put it in the freezer for a couple of months after, right? Cold storage, hot storage, cold storage, if anyone got that reference. But one thing I like to do, or I like to promote, again, going back to that SOC Essential book that I promote, it talks a little bit high level to this as to what exactly is needed. And especially if we're going to, maybe we'll just say IT because I love security. We go to IT, we're like, hey, we need a log. We need to log this IT tool. And they're like, why? And for some reason, people don't also like to share their data because they also like to keep in their little treasure trove. And they're like, no, it's mine. And you're like, why? Yeah. It's kind of like when I try to borrow my older sister's shirt and she's just like, get out of my closet. And I'm like, I don't live here. You can't tell me what to do. But again, right, going and seeing where's your gaps. I always recommend people to start developing a roadmap. I go back to scalability, right? What is your team now? What is your team in 2 years? What is your team in 5 years? And especially as an individual contributor, you're in the weeds, you know what's going on. How are you going to tell the story if an incident happened? Are you running into a visibility gap to even have a 100% confident analysis in your investigation? If you cannot provide that with already the security tools you have, that is a great place to start. Going into, hey, we have this host alert. I don't know what's going on from here. I see that they're logging into, this page on Google, but they clearly there somehow. Okay, well, maybe you're missing proxy or DNS logs, right? To make that conclusion. Or if they clicked a link, right? Now that's just opening up a bigger gap. So prioritizing, hey, what can we do to ensure we have login across the business? And just start working on those roadmaps. Another thing I always recommend people is to look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, right? They have a lot of great free training on their website, especially for people who aren't familiar with the detection engineering side. I also recommend looking at a concept called pyramid of pain, and that SOC book talks about it as well. And a lot of security tools and vendors, they talk about, this is where you have to learn what the difference between machine learning is, or AI detection, or whatever they call it. That baseline, the pyramid, the very foundation, is typically signatures, those IOCs, like IPs, domains, hashes, right? Things that can easily be changed by a threat actor, but also things that can easily be blocked within an organization or hunted on. And as you continue up the pyramid, this is where vendors start talking about that AI, right? things that are abnormal compared to what they typically see in the environment. So using that machine learning knowledge to find those differences, and then going to the very top where this is where those detection engineering, those behavioral analysis, some people call it threat hunting, because now they're hunting specific maybe threat actor groups and stuff like that, understanding how those malwares behave, because those different tactics are going to help lay out your threat map. And once you kind of get an idea, in fact, MITRE has a GitHub where you can just play with your own MITRE attack framework map, and you can upload these specific TTPs that your tools are already detecting on and see where your true gaps are. And just see, oh my gosh, like, hey, maybe we have a server that has a critical vulnerability that we can't patch. This is the exploit. We don't have any visibility into it. And so now your roadmap is based off of risk-based decisions, right? This is a security risk decision. And then, hey, maybe we can start talking about our business impact systems, things that are, going to be providing revenue. And this is the gap for that as well. And so now it's like, I'm also adding security risk-based decisions and business risk decisions, because if this specific server or app goes down, it's going to be bad news bears for a lot of people.
So I love that you're referencing MITRE quite a lot here, because I think this is, so we've, Attack IQ used to be a sponsor. I know the team over there, very, very well. And I worked with them during a lot of their threat-informed defense research that they did. We've had several of their folks on stream before. I absolutely love that we're seeing tactical and operational uses of MITRE, because I do think, tell me if you share this perspective or not, but it does feel like sometimes that vendors especially view MITRE as a purely academic exercise, and they throw it into tools just to say that they've got MITRE in tools. But there's actually good tactical and operational usage that can come from MITRE with the right team kind of looking at it the right way.
Yeah, and absolutely. And this also goes back to, if you're a salesperson on this, right? Know your audience. I had a vendor reach out to me, and it was actually through LinkedIn. And the first 3 sentences had the word CEO, C-suite, and CISO. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I don't care what your title is. Like, at the end of the day, is this going to provide benefit or not to my team? Because if my team is already working out of 6 different tools and everything, what is this tool? What's the gap that this tool is going to fix? Or am I just putting like 4 antiviruses from 4 different vendor families and hoping that they're going to play well together?
So I want to get to your cynicism on vendors, because I think this is something you and I could probably really do a number on together. I want to go back to the example you gave really quick about not having access. Maybe you're doing an investigation or something like that, and you don't have access to proxy logs, or you don't have access to WAF logs or something like that. If we change that dynamic just a little bit, if you mentioned that maybe in the construct of a post-investigation analysis, or maybe you're running through a tabletop and you realize you don't have it. Yeah. What about during an incident? How real is it to realize that you don't have the data that you need to investigate an incident that's happening right now? And let's say it's a critical, let's go extreme. Let's say it's ransomware on a server farm. What's that panic moment like? Like, how is kind of walk through that a little bit?
If we want to talk about if I haven't had dealt with any of this is my first time. Oh my gosh, I'm ripping my eyebrows and my eyelashes out, and I'm gonna go home bald. But I swear, nothing faces me anymore. I'm just like, different day, different fire.
Right.
Different day.
Right. Right.
Dang it, Brad. Dang it.
So the analyst who hasn't come to deal with that yet, how do they deal with it?
I swear, I had this one moment. You could just see it on their face, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know." Like, I was just like, "What do you need? What support? What conversation do I need to have to get what you need?" And this is, again, I go back to building your relationships and promoting your brand as who you are as a cyber team, right? If you're being like, I need it for my own little treasure trove of data, they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand why you need it until you have it happen. And this is where we put ourselves back into the shoes of people who are not wearing the security hats every single day and presenting them with technical data, because then you're technically right. and this is where you can probably leverage things such as like your pen testers and stuff like that, or, your vuln scans, and you're like, hey man, we have to have it. But in the moment of, right, if we're talking about ransomware, and it was that first initial, how did this even get in our environment? Because I guarantee you that is going to be one of the first questions someone sitting above is going to ask, how did this happen?
Yeah.
What did it do? And you're like, well, man, it took over the domain controller. So see you next Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
GG's, we're out.
See ya, man. But in the moment of, right, this is really important that you have those collaborative relationships. I feel like, being in security, we get that stereotype of working in the shadows. We're introverts. We don't want to like talk to anyone. And I'm sorry, end of the day, you're going to have to go talk to probably an Exchange admin or someone who works on those servers and be like, hi, you don't know me. We worked together for 5 years. Hi, can you help me out? Right. And one thing that I've done, and if you can't tell, I'm very outgoing. I'm very, happy-go-lucky until I'm not. But one thing I want to make sure is if I take PTO for 3 weeks and stuff hits the fan, how prepared is my team and how can they function without me, right? And so some things I do, a lot of team building things, right? Hey, this person's really passionate talking about, I don't know, PowerShell script because they do X, Y, Z and IT with it. Cool. They own a lot of stuff. They've been here for a while. Their name's everywhere. Let's bring them in, right? Let's have them showcase what they're passionate and what they work on. And I always tell my team, make sure you have 1 to 2 questions prepared, because this is how you're going to start building those professional relationships. This is how you're going to start outreaching, building also your personal brand, because maybe that other person is going to have a security question. And knock on wood, sometimes that investment is a returned investment because people are asking those right questions. They want to implement security. They want to make sure what they're doing is the correct way. Or, it makes difficult conversations a lot easier down the road. So pick your battle on that.
No, I love it. Let's flip, because I do want to talk about the vendor thing, because you did a show recently with another podcaster, where you've talked about vendors and the security operations center and things like that. What is your one, and I think you mentioned it a little bit, but I want to pull on the thread a little bit, but what is your one pet peeve from vendors when you're going to source new ones?
Oh my gosh. I use this reference on that podcast too. It is literally like dating. I'm not even kidding. And you reach out, right? You're like, hey, I might be interested. And they're like, oh, let's go to Fogo de Chao. Let's get this really nice steak Brazilian. And you're like, I'm vegetarian. And they're like silent. Yeah.
Like, playbook. Uh-oh. I thought that was a well-timed pause. Wow. While we wait to see if her internet comes back, we'll take a pause here for a second to see Nick Barker over on YouTube says, yay, cyber and security. Neal, you're the man. Thanks for sharing your expertise and experience, Reanna. Hopefully she comes back and gets a couple more. We get a couple more questions in from her on that one. While we're waiting for her to come back, do make sure you tune in tomorrow for Tea with a Hacker. We will be doing Tea with a Hacker tomorrow morning. Tea with a Hacker tomorrow morning will be, I've got a cancer update for you tomorrow morning, so you are going to want to tune in for Tea with a Hacker tomorrow morning. We do also have some giveaway announcements that are going to come in tomorrow, as well as some other partnerships, so you don't want to miss Tea with a Hacker tomorrow, although I'm supposed to have some contractors come in, so hopefully it's not too bad. And then don't forget to tune in. Don't forget to turn notifications on for this stream, because in 2 weeks we'll have another guest on to come in and talk about some more security operations and data operations topics with that as well. Oh, it looks like she's back. I just saw her over in the green room. Welcome back. Welcome back. I was like, oh God, her employer just realized she's talking on stream. They totally went in there and took off her internet.
I've done worse things at work.
So the last thing we heard from you was the dating analogy and the fact that you told some salesperson that you were vegan as they tried to take you to Fogo de Chao. And I was updating my playbook because I'm gonna have to tell my sales guy, if that happens, you got to do a different strategy.
But like one thing that I look for, I have 3 specific things when I look for in a vendor, right? I always make a has to have and would be nice list when I look at tools, right? These are things I have to have. It's non-negotiable. If you don't offer it, I'm sorry, there's not a second steak date or Golden Corral. I don't know. Whatever they take you to, whatever. I had a vendor I wanted to check.
Uh-oh, I think we're losing. I think her internet's having some issues again. We may lose her again. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no, Chad is upset. We're losing her. Quick, somebody send fiber. All right, we'll put her back over there for a second. Let her internet sort her stuff out. Yeah, the remix. I love that one, Chris Young. Yeah, we'll see if oh, it looks like she's back now. Here we go. Okay.
We really work in IT and security if we can police every 5 minutes.
That's right. No, absolutely. The only thing that's missing is like, can you show your hands, or are they underneath the desk trying to fidget with the hamster to make it like get the internet working?
My phone's like, oh, you need another Red Bull. You know, it's past that time, and you're like, I know, I need a break. Thank you. But one thing, like again, it's the non-negotiables. They have to have this. And one is always, what is their relationship? Internet was this. Fingers. There we go. Okay.
You've broken the internet, Reanna. You've officially broken the internet.
I always like it when you live stream. I'm just in my teeth. Sometimes I'm just like, oh man, that's on YouTube. I don't know whatever happened. This is probably not as bad. So, I'm here for it.
so I'm just gonna say right now, we've got a bunch of folks who love to do remixed clips. I can't promise. I can't promise what's going to come out of this. Especially like we got one mod. His name's DJ BSEC. Like I'm sure he's over there right now with some music, trying to figure out how to remix the Reanna Schultz remix video into existence on the internet right now. I can't promise it. I hold no responsibility. It's going to hit the internet. You're just going to have to thank me for it later.
I would love to repost that. I love the fun stuff like that.
Yes. All right, your non-negotiables. I think we've got enough steady internet. Your non-negotiables.
As you just, oh my gosh, now you cursed it, Neal. Oh, okay, we'll try this again. 3rd time's the charm. Again, non-negotiables, right? And then another thing I look for is that vendor relationship, right? Are you reading from a script? My favorite one I've ever had is I was like, okay, let's go ahead and demo. You look promising. And it was literally recorded.
Oh no.
The entire time.
Oh no.
And they got to, and I swear, I prepare these like super technical person, like, the person that you're like, alien which type. And this person, very blunt. Very blunt.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a good or bad thing, but I think it's funny. So anyways, I bring him into this because he's working on like that. He goes, hey, can you go back on? And you could just tell on the call, it's like silent. And, our I showed him my camera. Fine. I was thinking about it. Okay, there we go. Yay!
All right, I got one more. I got one more question for you, and then we'll give the hamster a break underneath the desk. But I do think this one is. I do think that there's one good question that did come from, not there was more than one good question, but I do think this one is really awesome. And I did appreciate this one from Twitch chat, Ryan. You had talked about how you go out and you stand up for your team and things like that. But this question came through and said, but from the other side, what can SOC analysts do to be good employees for their manager? I thought that was a really good question. Let's see if we can get through enough internet to answer that one, and then I'll let you go.
One thing, and this is kind of like I can only help you if you help me kind of situation. I don't expect my analyst or honestly any analyst in the industry to be like, we call them ticket monkeys, right? SOC monkeys. They go in, they press and leave for the day, right? No, you guys aren't spending countless hours studying for Security Plus, doing workshops, doing college classes, doing all of these things. And for you to come in and be like, yeah, they didn't click on this email, close, right? No. You are called SOC analysts, right? You are meant to be analyzing data and investigating. But at the same time, again, you have to have cycles to be prepared and ready. That's going to create burnout. You're going to burn, as they say, flames at both ends of the candlestick. And so my question to you is, what are you passionate about? You know, what made you want to get into cyber? What was that one college class that you probably still think about and you probably still do research about? Or maybe this is a topic that you saw and you saw like an influencer talk about and you're like, holy cow, that looks interesting. So then you dabble in it, but then you come to work and you're like, I don't enjoy my job anymore because I found something else that's interesting. So whenever I really look for that, how do you be a good employee, right? I want to make sure I'm investing in you, right? So what gets you excited? What is your passion? Followed by, how can we incorporate this into your day-to-day, right? Because when you come into work, I want to make sure that you're going to enjoy work, because if you're not pleasant, if you're not happy, you just naturally become a moody person, whether you want to admit it or not. And then that's also because, other people are going to start not being happy. And this is how you fall apart as a team. And when stuff hits the fan, who has the energy and who wants to be stuck in a high stress situation with people that aren't happy and they don't like, right? I have been in that room and it's very uncomfortable, especially when you're trying to organize a situation and nobody's talking. And you're like, I need you to talk. I need you to tell me what you're, and they're like, I don't want to talk because so-and-so made me upset. I'm like, I don't care. Like, it's not about your feelings today. But,
right.
But I've learned, especially like even when I was an individual contributor, when I was doing stuff I was excited about and I was incorporating it into my day-to-day, I really enjoy the detection engineering part, right? Going and hunting, finding the things that are the unknown. And I had a SANS instructor one time tell me, he said, if you walk in and you assume that you weren't breached, you need to walk back out that door and come back in with a different mindset. And that's stuck with me for my entire year. And then I always get asked the question, what keeps you up at night? And I'm like, it's the stuff I can't see.
That's right.
I can only protect what I can see. And so that's where I got excited about the detection. And I've learned when I promote things I'm excited about, when I promote things I'm very passionate about, I call it a rash, right? It's contagious, it spreads, and other people start getting excited and they're passionate. And so when stuff hits the fan, people are pitching their ideas. They want their voices to be heard. People are collaborating because, again, at the end of the day, we all have the same mission. We have that same focus as to how can we do this? How can we get this job done? And there's no right or wrong way on how to do something. And we're all trying to get to that same end result as well. So again, answer to your question, tell me what you want to be invested in. So that way we can start having those conversations.
That's awesome. And you really resonated with our audience that somebody said, can you teach a course on that one as well? So Reanna, thank you so much for spending time with me and my cyber insecurity and my Sec Data Ops audience. I really do truly appreciate it. Go give that hamster running your internet a break for the rest of the afternoon. And I'm going to send you back off to the green room. I'm going to talk to my chat here in a little bit, but you and I will catch up later. Chat, thank you as always. What an awesome stream. What a Oh God, mind-blowing the wealth of knowledge that she has. It's absolutely amazing. I love having guests like her on because you really do get a sense of what's happening at that level, at those different levels. And that's what we're all about here, is to bring you those perspectives day in and day out. As I mentioned, make sure you're tuned in tomorrow morning at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. I forget what that is across all the time zones. Go to the time zone calculator and do that math for Tea with a Hacker. We're going to sit down Friday morning. We're going to have some nice hot tea. We're going to answer your questions. With that being said, make sure you got notifications turned on across all the platforms that we're streaming across: Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, X, all of them. For the next time Sec Data Ops goes live in 2 weeks, or cyber insecurity on any of the other nights. With that being said, whether you're on the red side or the blue side or still deciding, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.